Welcome back, everyone. I would now like to welcome Mr. Shivendu Raut, Vice President, Access Development Services, for the presentation of the Dipstick analysis on the impact of COVID-19 on handloom and handicraft sectors of India. The study was undertaken by Access under the project Living Rooms of India, which is supported by HSBC. The study primarily focused on assessing the extent of the impact and how the artisans have been coping with the pandemic. Thank you, Shivendu. I now hand over the screen to you.
Hi. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Ruti, for the introduction. So I'm very happy and feel privileged to present this important study to all of you. Continuing with the focus on handloom and handicrafts in the last session, which was an excellent session listening to the stalwarts of the sector. I think I hope I would the findings of the study will add some value to the discussions already that has happened. So let me share this slide with you. I have a small presentation. So this particular study was undertaken under two major projects of Access. As Shruti said, one project is Living Looms of India, being supported by HSBC, and the other one, which she missed, one is the digital empowerment of artisans and micro entrepreneurs, supported by UNDP. So these two projects we have been implementing since quite some time, and very important programs from the points of view of weavers and artisans. So this particular dipstick study was conducted in 14 clusters of India. So as we know that when COVID struck us last year in February, March, and the handloom and handicraft sector being very vulnerable to these kind of shocks. So basically what happened, the agriculture sector bounced back pretty well because their products are essential in nature, but the non-farm products or the products from the handloom and handicraft sector being non-essential in nature, they struggle a lot, and even now a lot of them are right now struggling. I don't need to re-emphasize the importance of the handloom handicraft sector, which provides almost 65 lakh persons employment opportunities, contributes immensely to the GDP of the country, and so many lives are at stake and their livelihoods are at stake. So we thought that we should conduct one particular dipstick study to understand how these workers are dealing with the pandemic. So that's how this particular thing came to our minds, and we conducted this study. And there are two major projects that we are running. Under that, we thought of undertaking this study. So the objectives of this particular study was twofold. One was to understand how and to what extent this particular pandemic has affected the lives of these millions of people, and that being the case, how they are coping with it, and what do they need in the second part, what do they need to bounce back or revive their livelihood activities. So basically, overall, these were the main two objectives, and within that, we wanted to evaluate the pre and post-COVID scenario to assess the extent of loss incurred by these weavers and artisans, to understand the major challenges faced by the weavers and artisans, to understand the kind of help that they received from various sources, and then in the second part, to assess the status of revival of businesses, to understand the different needs of weavers and artisans, requirement of working capital, marketing needs, and to understand the significance of e-commerce platforms in their lives. So these are the main different objectives of the study. The methodology are pretty simple. We kept it in the favor of time and all money time constraints. We kept the methodology very simple. In COVID times, it was very difficult to travel and all. So we thought of conducting a telephone and WhatsApp based survey. So we choose 8 states of India, which we currently are working in with the handloom workers and handicraft artisans. These 8 states are Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Telangana, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, Haryana. So basically, it covers most of a lot of South India, Central India, and North India, major 8 states, and it covers 14 clusters, a large chunk of 7 handloom clusters, 7 handicraft clusters, total of 578 weavers and artisans were covered under the study. Trained professionals conducted these structured questionnaire based interviews over the phone. Sometimes Google form was used, and the data was analyzed and presented by central team based in Delhi at Access. So this was the methodology. Uh, in short, the cluster profile looks like this. I'll not go too much into the details, but the clusters were two in Madhya Pradesh, Mysore and Chanderi. These are important clusters for handloom sarees. One cluster in Kota, Rajasthan, which is known for the Kota Doria sarees and some other weaves. In Badmer, we have been working with 200 artisans in applique work. One cluster in Uttar Pradesh, that is Mirzapur, who are engaged in carpet making. There are three clusters in Maharashtra, rather 4 clusters. One here in this slide, Osmanabad, where Banjara art and embroidery work is going on. Another cluster in Wardha, where these women make exquisite, good quality of bags made out of clothes. A cluster in Beed, Maharashtra, which is on again Banjara art and jewelry. Then another cluster in Maharashtra, which is Talasari near Bombay. The artisans are engaged in exquisite art form of Warli. 2 clusters in Assam. One is in Majuli, one is Lakhimpur. These are 2 clusters wherein you will find a loom in every household. They also make very high quality handloom sarees. Narayanpet, another handloom cluster in Telangana. So these are the main clusters that have been covered. Apart from that, some artisans have been covered in Karnataka and Haryana. So we thought of covering at least 30 artisans or weavers from each cluster. So you can see in this slide that in each state, each cluster, at least 30 have been covered, and it makes total of 578 respondents. To talk about the artisans profile, what kind of artisans? Basically, almost they constitute 70% of female and 30% of male, little bit here and there. A little bit more than 50% of BPL households covered under the study. And to talk about the handloom and handicraft, almost 50-50 to 74 households of handloom workers and 294 handicraft workers. There are a few other artisans who make handmade food and all. To know a little bit more about the artisans and weavers, how they do their business, mostly they sell their products in 2 channels. One is the local market, which is dominant in 58% cases. Local market means in their villages, village hearts, local block market, or a little bit far away market. And the second most important is personal contact. So people know them, and then they get some orders for their business. So these are are the most important methods of selling for the artisans and weavers, and there are some other methods like direct to party and to middlemen. Some online platforms, very few are now engaged, and some artisans and weavers get support from some support agencies. So these are the basically the profile of artisans and weavers covered under the project, under the study. I'll just summarize the findings and then go into the details. In this slide particularly, the summary is there. So as we saw in the first slide, local market and personal contact are considered the preferred mode of selling for the artisans and weavers. So basically very physical. Second one important is the income of weavers or artisans impacted really badly. The artisans who earn less than 1 lakh rupees, the number has gone from 68% to 85%. So there is a large increase in the population that are earning very little. More than 80% of artisans were unemployed for up to 6 months during the COVID lockdown period. More than 70% of the artisans' standing orders were either cancelled or kept on hold during the lockdown period of 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Most of the artisans have not received any kind of government support for livelihood revival. Only 35% of artisans restarted their businesses after lockdown, and out of that, only 7% out of them could start business fully. Even now, so that makes the study more important to understand what is the status of these small businesses right now. 80% of the artisans consider working capital as the biggest challenge for them. So these are major findings. We'll get into the details of it one by one. Impact of COVID-19 on income of artisans. So if you see, the artisans earning below 1 lakh rupees, the number has gone up from 68% to 85%. That means poor artisans are becoming even poorer. Their incomes are becoming even shrinked. The artisans who were earning a little bit of money, even they are squeezed now. 21% of them were earning a little bit of money, so that is now come down to 14%. So the only number which has increased is the poor ones. In this slide, you can see the impact of COVID and its different aspects in terms of whether the businesses were completely shut down. Some businesses, some orders were cancelled, some payments, some artisans faced problems in payments. Some artisans faced problems of unavailability of raw material. Labor shortage was a big problem for some, but you can see clearly that 58% of artisans faced all of these problems, starting from complete shutdown to business orders cancellation, to payments issues and raw material issues, labor shortage and everything. 58%. So this has affected their life like really hard, really bad. So talking about the shutdown period and how badly they were impacted, you can see here 32% of artisans and weavers business were completely shut down, and if you include up to few months, a few days to 3 months to 6 months, it is like it crosses 85%. So up to 6 months is 85%, and 32%, at least 32% suffered up to more than 6 months. So that's a huge number. I mean, even after 6 months, they were not able to really come out of that situation. And cluster-wise information is always there, number-wise and cluster-wise. It is presented there in the slide. So what is the situation regarding standing orders being cancelled? So as you can clearly see, so more than 75%, in 20% of artisans' case, almost all orders were cancelled. For 27% of artisans, 50 to 75% of their orders were cancelled. So if you put it together, it comes to almost 50%. So almost 50% of artisans faced problem of cancellation of orders, up to 50%. So if one can imagine that when the standing orders get cancelled for the artisans, they don't have any other way to earn any money. They are not used to go to labor market, to toil on the roads or the building sites, or go to farmlands for any kind of labor work. Artisans are known for their artwork. They work by their hand, so they're not used to other modes of labor work. So that this is how their incomes and lives were so badly impacted. uh, then moving on to the cash flow, what was happening to the cash flows? How did they manage their cash flows during this period? So 38% borrowed money from for their household needs, even not only business, but for their household needs. They are indebted now. So now almost everyone is now indebted for either for their household needs or for their businesses. So what kind of support they received? So 56% are reporting that they received no support from any sources, and whichever people got some support, it was like money grant or help from different sources. Like it's very minuscule. 7% of them reported, 31% reported getting some credit support, and 6% reported support in terms of groceries and food items. So these were their cash flows. In terms of support, receiving support from the government to rebuild their livelihoods and business, uh, almost everyone, only 3% are reporting that they got some support from government, and especially to business. Out of that 3%, only 2% are reporting that they got some support to revive their businesses in terms of credit or facilitation or something. So this sums up how how why so the further research needs to be done. Why this has happened with the handloom handicraft sector workers? Why government support could not reach them? But these were the simple surveys that comes out with these kind of drastic numbers. So then we had another set of questions on restarting the businesses. Uh, so only 35% are saying that they have started their businesses. So the study was conducted in December, January. So we are almost uh, 1 year past of the COVID pandemic happening, and still then only 35% have started their businesses. Some of them who have started businesses are in Vadmer or Kota or Majuli. So and there is a high probability that these numbers are reflected because we have our own field staff there, and some project interventions are going on by Access or by some other NGOs. Some have started their businesses, so we can see that clearly in our own clusters. The numbers are higher than where we don't have presence. So this is quite clear. And talking about the challenges that they face while restarting their businesses, the most important challenge is lack of working capital. So that is like 31% of them face working capital problem. Uh, 35% of them face the problem of marketing or getting orders. So there is no physical market open. Exhibitions are very few and far. So this is the season, the winter season and spring season is the season when all of the big exhibitions and fairs should be happening. But we see that very few of them are happening even now. If they're not doing any business, so the next year even seems very bleak for them. So that is very difficult situation for them right now. and the other issues that they are facing a lack of revenue and business opportunities. That means actually new orders are not coming to them. There is some problem of shortage of raw material because of movement of materials. Even now, it is not pretty normal. So these are the main problems that they are facing while restarting their business. Another question was how many of them have started fully? Only about 7% say that they have started their businesses fully, or they have regained their livelihood status. And these are basically only 2-3 clusters. One of them is we are working there, and our field team is currently busy there. So, and then there are a few more clusters. Otherwise, no one has really fully started their business. Even now, only 7%. So, what is the extent of this challenge of working capital? So, 80% of them say working capital is a big challenge. Uh, in almost all clusters, if you see, except for example, Karnataka, everyone is saying that working capital is a big problem. What are the different sources of working capital for them? Uh, so this is again a big concern that 55% even now. This is not very new. This is expected of informal sector and all, but nonetheless, 55% is a big number that they go to informal sources wherein the interest rates are really high. And in this pandemic period when they don't have any income to live or for their livelihoods, and they have to pay high sums in the form of interest, uh, and some of them, only a few of them are getting loans from banks or any formal sources. So this is a big cause for worry for the sector as a whole, and for all the NGOs working in the sector. We have to somehow find out ways to help these artisans to get some working capital. How many artisans are aware about e-commerce platforms? So this is not as bad as it generally thought. 66% of them are aware of it. Yes, of course, they are not onboarded on e-commerce platforms, or they have not really started their businesses on e-commerce platforms, but they are somehow aware of the e-commerce platforms. Either they are buying or selling on the e-commerce platforms. A lot of them are actually buying their raw materials from e-commerce sites. So this is a good sign. So we have to take this forward. Support required. What kind of support they require to revive their business? So, the options were like working capital requirement and online market linkages, other marketing linkages, financial aid from government. This was an open-ended question. So these were the main things that came out of their mouth, that they want this kind of support, and 80% of them are saying they want all of these working capital, market linkages, and financial aid. Of course, all these are important parts of business, but 80% of them say that without these, they cannot revive their businesses. So in the end, just for when we analyze the data and we had discussions with the artisans and weavers, we realized that the way forward, or some of the recommendations or the measures to improve their lives can be divided into two parts. The first part is on short term or the medium term measures, and some of the measures are in long term nature. So they cannot be started immediately, but small steps have to be taken over a period of 4 to 6 years. In the short term, what are the needs are like, we have to find different ways to help them with easy provision of working capital, maybe through local banks or through the Mudra scheme. We have to design some financial products, especially for this pandemic period. because their cash flows are really bad at the moment. They're not getting new orders, but at the same time, they have to go ahead with their production. So they need their raw materials, they need some labor forces and all, but they don't have the money. So the financial products have to be redesigned to suit the need of the pandemic period, and the loans have to be given at some concessional rates. Uh, then organizing multitude of exhibitions and fairs is very important, because they already have some inventory lying with them. They don't they cannot sell it, and if they cannot sell it, they cannot get their raw materials. So this is the time when all the exhibitions should be happening. If the pandemic has not gone away from our lives right now, but we have to think of ways when vaccination is done, and the situation improves in a few months time, hopefully. So government and NGOs working together should should organize multitude of exhibitions and fairs, because this has been the this exhibition and fairs, this is the most important mode of selling for the artisans right now. So e-commerce is the way for the future, or maybe the medium term. After some time they would that would happen, but in the beginning, to start with, I mean, in immediate term, we have to focus and help the artisans sell their products in exhibitions and fairs, and then on start the onboarding process of artisans and weavers on e-commerce platforms under the one project with UNDP. We are already doing it. I'm sure there are other NGOs and government also focusing a lot on this particular mode of selling. So it has to be done continuously for next another 1 year or so that a lot of artisans come on the e-commerce platforms. So these are the short-term measures. In the long-term measures, as in the farm sector, farmer producer companies are being promoted by the government in a big way. So 10,000 FPOs are going to be formed in the next few years. Similarly, in the non-farm sector, the government needs to come up with a new scheme to promote non-farm producer companies. NABARD has one particular scheme called OFPO promotion scheme. Yes, but that has not taken up really in a big way. That has to be focused on right now, and then there can be a big push from the government, like the Rural Development Department or different MSMEs and all. Uh, and then we have to focus on building entrepreneurship among the artisans and weavers, because if they don't do their own businesses right now, they cannot really grow. And then there have to be the financing for building infrastructure at village or block levels. Right now, the infrastructure is very poor, and they cannot really do large scale marketing with that kind of infrastructure. And last but not the least, developing artisan ecosystem like the training institutions, design institutions, financing options, facilitating agencies, etc., have to be reintegrated thoroughly into the ecosystem, and a lot more needs to be done. There are a few design and training institutions especially focused on the handloom sector, handicraft sector, but a lot more needs to be done. So yeah, so this is the summary, the way forward to go ahead. This is our recommendation. With this, I think I have come to the end of the presentation. Thanks again to the organizers in my team to give me this opportunity to present. Thank you very much.